ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste and welcome to the second session of the Bodhasara, and I see that the text is just put there. You can click on that to get access to the text. I can also share this here. Can you see? Are you able to see? Really, there is a mystery about how these things work, so you can just nod your head if you can see. Yes?
Yes,
Yeah?
Swamiji.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm
Swamiji.
glad. Yeah, I'm happy that you can see. Good. So, before we get to the verse itself, just a few things. We will chant it, then I can stop sharing and then we can talk about it. विचित्राक्षरविन्यासैः पवित्रार्थकथारसैः विचित्राक्षरविन्यासैः पवित्रार्थकथारसैः पावयामि निजां वाणीं मुनीन्द्रदिनचर्यया पावयामि निजां वाणीं मुनीन्द्रदिनचर्यया. This is the verse that we are studying, and as you know, this is a section, as I said earlier, in the text called the Bodhasara, where the Jnani Lakshana are described. The Lakshana of the Jnani, Lakshana means the characteristics of the Jnani, are in fact a wonderful sadhana for the Jnani, the one who wants to become a Jnani. In other words, a jnani wannabe. So the jnani wannabe emulates the jnani how? First, by looking at the daily life and looking at how the jnani walks, how the jnani talks, etc., and then using that as a benchmark to gauge one's own inner growth. This is how one grows, because the jnani then becomes a very important role model. And so this we see that there is, as I said, there is a curiosity for people's lives that are other than people like who are like us. And we talked earlier about the lifestyle of celebrities and how everybody is so addicted to following the lifestyle of various celebrities. And then additionally, the sadhus are also an object of curiosity. People used to ask Pujya Swamiji all the time, what do you do the whole day? Pujya Swamiji would laugh, you know, what do you do? And it was not that they were meaning anything bad, they were just curious. What does a Swami do? What does a Jnani do the whole day? I mean, and because from the mind standpoint of the people who are asking these questions, it is understandable. We appreciate where the people are coming from, because they have to go to work, and then they have to bring food on the table, they have to feed the family, they have to educate the children, they have duties towards the society, they have duties towards everything. So many, neighbors, community, nation, etc. They are plugged into various roles: mother, father, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, grandmother, grandfather, employer, employee. It's endless. And so if somebody comes to interview, and then say, what do you do? Well, I don't have a job. Oh, you're unemployed. Well, not exactly, but I don't work for a living. And then, do you have a bank account? Well, not really. And then, do you have duties? Well, not really. Then what do you do the whole day? This is an object of curiosity, naturally. And then people also think, such an able-bodied man or woman, why are they sitting in orange robes? They should be productive. They should give to the society. Here they are sitting and waiting for donations. This is not right. There is also some judgment there. And all this is understandable, because the lifestyles of the sadhus, nobody knows what this is all about. And in the Bhagavad Gita also we have a similar question, which comes in the second chapter. What is that question? That the last portion of the second chapter. Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava स्थितधीः किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम. So how does Arjuna is very eager to know, how does a person of knowledge, the person who has understood the self to be everything, the person who has withdrawn all the unnecessary projections, how does that person know? How does that person move in the world? How do we know such a person exists? What are the signs? Will they have a name tag? I am a jnani. Hello, nice to meet you. I am a jnani. Will they have a name tag, like in the olden days when you used to go to office parties? Now it's a vague memory, but remember that Christmas party, you were told to stick one thing here with your name on it. So will the jnani say, I am a jnani? Obviously not. And so therefore Arjuna says, how do I recognize a jnani? How do they talk? Ka bhasha? And then how do they eat? How do they walk? How do they sit? How do they stand? And Lord Krishna very beautifully answers the spirit of the question rather than the question itself. The spirit of the question is very nice, because the spirit of the question is, what constitutes a jnani? But the literal question that is asked is, how do I recognize a jnani? Jnani watching is not like bird watching. You go with a pair of binoculars. Yes, that is a spotted grouse. Yes, this is a rare bird. Yes, that is some kind of a owl. You can keep on saying that. The great horned owl. This is not like, you have some idea in the book of the characteristics, and then you look for that, behind the binoculars it is seen, and then you are ecstatic. This is some kind of a turkey family, because it's got this wattle and all these things. You can just keep on saying the jnani watching is not like bird watching. There is a fundamental difference, in the sense that there is this Atma Jnanam, there are no discernible signs. And therefore Arjuna answers the spirit of the question. And he says, the one who has a say over his or her strong prejudices and preferences, raga and dvesha, that is the person who is a jnani. the one who is able to cast off all the desires even as they are at the level of the fancies in the mind, the one who has the complete willpower to not entertain those fancies and make those fancies into conflagration of desires and then have the pressure to fulfill them. That is a jnani, the one who doesn't have that pressure. And the one who has samatvam, the one who has equanimity, etc., etc. Very beautiful section. Here it's a very interesting and a different kind of a jnani description, because this is really meant for ajnanis. As you will see from the verse itself, it is meant for ajnani, because what does the ajnani do with the regular people? They have a routine. What do you do upon waking up? You head to the bathroom, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, and then you wonder what I should do next. You take a shower. And so the daily life of a Vaidika, and then you sit for puja. This is a life of a Vaidika, because when Narahari was writing the Bodhasara, this is what was the daily life of the people in the 1800s. This is what there was the daily life, a Vaidika life, a clean life that is primarily committed to prayer and prayerful, what is that, the prayerful execution of all actions. Karma yoga. So this is the life of a karma yogi, and then so describing, so what does Narahari do? Narahari takes the daily life of a regular person, a Vaidika, and juxtaposes the Jnani's life on top of that routine. Very fascinating. So, if the Ajnani or the masses in general, if they are just getting up and washing the face, what would the Jnani's face washing look like? What is the water? And for Narahari, here is where his poetry shines. He says the water is the waters of Shraddha. The face is Jignasa. We'll come to that. Very beautiful. And so, like this, he juxtaposes the Jnani's lifestyle on the regular timetable of a person in the world, a Vaidika person in the world. And then what does he do? He then shifts the ingredients. The imagery remains the same, whether it is face washing or sitting for prayer or whatever it is. But he just turns the table around by imagining the Jnani's life very, very differently, extremely differently. And then, so here the first two verses are that of his own prayer. And then a little background for this. Prayer in the life of a Vaidika, has certain kinds of steps there. When you sit down for prayer, there is something called nyasa. Nyasa here is not sannyasa, not giving up. Nyasa is a kind of a protective ritual where certain body parts are touched and then sanctified, and a kind of a digbandhana, a kind of a perimeter, a sacred perimeter is established where the puja can take place, in order to not let in any kind of difficult energies or distractions to come into this sacred space. So this construction of the sacred space and the sanctification of the entire body mind sense complex is called a pre-ritual, in Sanskrit called nyasa. Every puja has this. This is a very important pre-ritual before the ritual starts. Then as the ritual starts, whether it is some kind of a fire ritual or a very elaborate puja, then you put on a kind of with a durva grass, a kind of a grass, a kind of a ring is fashioned, a ring with a little tuft coming out of it. It is called pavitra. Literally it means that which sanctifies. Pavitra. Punati, that which sanctifies. So that is put on the ring finger. Because in Ayurveda, the meridian of the ring finger connects to the heart. So therefore, therefore there is a connection between the organs of action and the heart, and so then this pavitra is slipped on to the ring finger, and with that the puja starts. Then how does the puja end? The puja usually ends, and here we can imagine something like a Satyanarayana puja. The puja ends with a storytelling, a katha. There is always a katha. And then, if any Panditji is helping you to do the puja, the Panditji will say, do not get up without listening to the story. It's a kind of a moral, there is a story with a moral behind it. Otherwise, you will not get the punya from the puja. And so the story becomes very important. Why? Because the point of this puja is what? That is what is revealed by the story. So usually the story is a no-brainer. There will be two families, and one will be very devoted to Bhagavan. One family is very devoted, and the other family is not devoted at all. In fact, the ends justify the means. By any means necessary, they get what they want, they do whatever they want, and then this is how they are leading their life. And interestingly, it's the dharmic family that gets completely challenged and tested. And then they go through adverse circumstances, either poverty or loss of loved ones or separation from loved ones, all these things, misunderstandings galore, all these things, or maybe a combination of all of the above. And then what happens? Then they have a certain kind of a darshan. So the Lord comes in a pratyaksha form, in a manifest form, and tells them, this was a test, you have passed the test because you did not give up dharma even in the face of calamities and adversity. So then what happens? Then we have a kind of a, the moral of the story, very very easy to understand. That the story is meant to inspire the people to be devoted to dharma, because dharma is a manifestation of the Lord. So the point of this preamble is to talk about the three important aspects of the ritual that are going to be talked about here in verse number 1. First one is called nyasa. Second, which is the pre-ritual of sanctifying the body mind sense complex and creating a sacred atmosphere for the ritual that is to follow. And then the slipping of the pavitra ring, the ring made of durva grass, to make that, to sanctify the heart of the ragadveshas and to sanctify the organs of action. And then at the end is the storytelling, where everybody listens to, the whole family listens to the story, and then they take the prasad in the hand and then get up and go. Then that finishes the ritual. So here he says that I am also doing a ritual. Who is I? Narahari, the author. He says, I am also engaged in a kind of a ritualistic worship. And what is this ritualistic worship? The ritualistic worship involves nyasa. Here he calls it vinyasa, never mind, same meaning. Nyasa. So what is the nyasa? The nyasa is not saying prajanane brahma tishtatu padayor vishnus tishtatu. That is not the nyasa. The nyasa here is an entirely different nyasa. He says, my nyasa, my process of sanctifying the body mind sense complex and sanctifying this whole section that is about to come out of me, is through the picking of vichitra akshara. Vichitra means colorful. Yeah, vichitra in certain vernacular languages means weird. Don't take it to be weird. Here it means colorful. Vichitrakshara vinyasaihi. So his nyasa is not touching various body parts and then, like a pandit would do before the puja. No, his nyasa is roaming in the meadows of the alphabets, in the garden of the alphabets, and plucking the appropriate letters and alphabets and stringing them together to make this section called the Munindra Dinacharya. See how beautiful. Vichitrakshara vinyasaihi. Third case, which means through this vinyasa, through this pre-ritual, which is, and the pre-ritual to go to this composition, to this poetic composition is what? Roaming freely in the garden of the alphabets and picking what speaks to you and what you like and what jumps out. The flower called the flower called the flower called ka, kha, ga, gha, all these flowers in the kavarga. They look alike, they are dancing. Oh, I need a few consonants, I need a few vowels, I need a few nasals, and then I'm going to string a garland which describes the daily life of the sages. This is my dedication, this is my worship. So beautiful. Think about that, very nice. Vichitrakshara vinyasaihi. Then what is, if that is the vinyasa, then what is the pavitra? Pavitrartha katha rasaihi. Here is combining the two. Pavitra here is the kadi, the stories. Katha rasa means the stories full of the full of pure stories which have a moral message. So that is the katha rasa, the katha sara, the sara of this katha, the rasa means the essence of these stories serve to inspire. Serve to inspire, they they serve to help, they serve to help all the other people who are intrigued about the Gnani's life. And so these stories purify not only me, the writer of the stories, but also all the people who speak, who listen to these stories. And this is how it is, usually this is what this is the place given in the Hindu dharma for sages and saints. And there is a beautiful verse elsewhere that says that everybody goes to the Ganga to wash off their omissions and commissions, their papa, their regrets, their guilts, their hurts, and all of that. They go to the Ganga to take a dip, and then they come out cleansed. This is the belief. They come out cleansed of all their omissions and commissions. But the Ganga herself, she is waiting for the sages and saints to dip their feet in her, by which all the accumulated papas are gone for her. You see how it is? So the Ganga purifies everybody, and the sages even purify the Mother Ganga, who sometimes gets burdened. This is a belief, okay? Who gets burdened by cleansing so many people of their papas. All it takes is for the feet of the sage to dip into the Ganga, just the big toe to dip into the Ganga, and the Ganga is totally purified again and rejuvenated again. And so, in the same way, he says, Pavitra Artha. So the pure through the colorful syllables, and arranging those colorful syllables like a mala, like a garland of that is fit for worship. And what does the garland have? The garland has colorful syllables and various stories, stories of the saints and sages, stories of how the day-to-day life of the saints and the sages proceeds in the everyday. So here he has finished the whole puja. So you see how it is. His puja, from the nyasa to the katha and the pavitra in the middle, everything is included in one line. This is poetry. This is sheer poetry. It is so beautiful. So vichitrakshara vinyasaihi pavitrartha katha rasaihi. So with the colorful arrangement of the syllables, and with the help of the essence of the pure stories, what am I doing? I'm not writing this for you. Who am I to write this for you? I'm writing this for me. Pavayami nijam vani. I am purifying my own speech so that it is then fit to write the rest of the Bodhasara. I am purifying my own speech so that I become a better individual. Like the Bhagavad Gita says, Lord Krishna says, Yoginaha karma kurvanti sangam tyaktva atma shuddhaye. Atma shuddhi here is not Atma, Antakarana shuddhaye. So the yogis also do this kind of karma. They write, they may teach, they may do so many things. They may be teaching yoga, they may be teaching Vedanta, they may be talking to people, they may be helping some kind of cause like Aim for Seva or any other cause to help the people. And then so they are doing all these things. The yogis are doing all these things, and then what? And then as the yogis are doing all these things, they are not doing them out of a pressure to gain some fulfillment of some desire, or the pressure to be famous or be rich. No, they are doing it for their own growth, for their own benefit. So here Narahari, in praying that this whole section comes out effortlessly for him, he says, I am not laboring under the misapprehension that I am doing a big favor to you by narrating the stories or the daily life of the saints and sages. I'm not doing you any favors. Hardly. I am purifying my own vak, my own vani, speech. I am purifying my speech through writing this section of the daily life of the best among the sages. So humble and so beautiful. Very, very nice. Let us make sure we haven't left anything out. Vichitrakshara vinyasaihi pavitrartha katharasaihi pavayami nijam vanim munindra dinacharyaya. One more thing to notice is all the words in the instrumental case. Vichitrakshara vinyasaihi, plural instrumental. Pavitrartha katharasaihi, plural instrumental. Munindra dinacharyaya, again singular instrumental. The instrumental case in Sanskrit, even in English, is used to, to see, it is used for many, purposes. Firstly, to show the instrument of action. So here, the instrument of action here is not himself. The instrument, the primary instrument of action are these words these words and syllables that are going to be strung together in a beautiful mala, and the stories of the life style of the saints, and the daily schedule of the muni. Muni here means manana shilatvat munihi. Mantum shilam asya asti iti munin. Muni. So Muni here means the one who is contemplative by nature, Munihi. And so the one who is contemplative by nature, a sage, a saint. So that is front and center. Not his word shenanigans, not his poetry, not himself, not his ahankara, not his accomplishments as a Pandit of Vedanta and a Pandit of the Sanskrit language. So, is this really an instrument usage of the instrumental case? In a way, yes, but in a way, no, because this is a very rare usage of the instrumental case in Sanskrit called Itham Bhute Tritiya. Itham Bhute Tritiya means where the instrument is not no longer an instrument; it has become the action and it has become the actor itself. So, Vichitrakshara Vinyasaihi, it's not through the arrangement of colorful syllables, even though we would translate it like that. The arrangements of colorful syllable itself in its own form. Itham bhute means in its own form. And the stories themselves comprise, and the lifestyle of the sages comprise the agents of purification. So they are no longer an instrument now. What they have been, they have become the agents of purification. And so it's a very rare, and a flipped use of the third case, which is very, very beautiful to observe here and very beautiful to see. Pavayami causal, I cause my speech. Nijam vanim pavayami. I cause my speech to be purified through talking about the daily life of the sages is purifying me. And I offer it to you secondarily and hope that it will do something for you as well. So you see how he gets out of the way. He totally jumps out of the way and let the daily life of the sages, their stories, do the talking, and the arrangements of the syllable, which is a God-given gift that he has. Much like the Maheshwara Sutras, which dropped into Panini's lap, which he heard the sound of the Damarus. I un, rilrik, eong, I ouch, hayavarat, lun. Other people heard, just some dum dum dum, some damaru sounds, but he heard all these arrangements of the syllables of the meta language. Amazing. And so, like this, these words are forming themselves. Narahari says, this section is writing itself. Bhagavan is writing this section. And through these words, which are in the form of colorful syllables, which are in the form of delightful stories, purifying stories, these words, these are the agents of this particular section. And this is how the whole thing is presented, and what it is doing for me, he says, is beyond compare. What it is doing for me, I cannot even let you know, because it is just so beautiful. And the it is purifying my speech. Vak tapas is very, very important, very, very important. What to say, what to not say, and when to say, and when to not say, all these things. This is very, very important. And sometimes we miss this, not because we want to say mean things. Nobody wants to say mean things. Nobody wants to hurt anybody else. But one misses this because of the pressure of raga and the dveshas. This is why one misses this. And so here he offers this garland for us, so that just like his speech was purified, his heart was purified, the same thing can happen to the readers. Next one. गौरीं महेश्वरः प्राह, गौरीं महेश्वरः प्राह, चिदानन्दमयीं स्थितिं, चिदानन्दमयीं स्थितिं, वदामि तन्मतच्छायां, वदामि तन्मतच्छायां, दिनचर्यापदेशतः, दिनचर्यापदेशतः. Again, this verse is also part of his prayer. And what is the prayer here? Gaurim Maheshwarah Praha, very simple Sanskrit. Praha, prakarshena aha, said in a delightful and beautiful and a total way. Taught, said. Who said? Maheshwarah praha. Maheshwara said. Unto whom did Maheshwara say? Was Maheshwara? Maheshwara here is Lord Shiva. Was Lord Shiva talking to himself? No, no, no. Gaurim Praha. He was talking to his consort Gauri. May as well be talking to himself because Gauri and Maheshwara are one, really. So doesn't matter. So Gauri is the one that is being spoken to. Maheshwara is the speaker. Gaurim Maheshwarah Praha. Praha here not just said, unfolded until she understood. What did he praha? See, this is how we speak Sanskrit. In between, just use the words. What did he say? What did he praha? Chidanandamayim sthitim praha. He talked about sthitim. Sthiti means here not a state, that would be a wrong translation. He talked about abidance. He talked about abidance in the self as Satchidananda. Gaurim Maheshwarah Praha. Lord Maheshwara taught his consort Parvati, aka Gauri. What did he teach? He taught her the Atma Vidya, Brahma Vidya. And so that is what is called Chidanandamayim Sthitim. More about that very soon. But where did he teach? I mean, the whole Puranas are full of conversations between Shiva and Parvati. Parvati represents the best of the jignasus, the best of the ones who are desiring this knowledge. And Lord Shiva embodies the best of the teachers of Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman. And the two together, they are, a wonderful, very inspiring combination of teacher and student, just like Lord Krishna and Arjuna. So if you look through any Purana, like where the what is that, the Vishnu Sahasranama is taught, and then Parvati again asks the question, how can I, supposing one doesn't have the time to chant the entire Vishnu Sahasranama, how can one have a shortcut? She knew that people in Kali Yuga are not going to chant 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. Because they will have these devices called smartphones, and they will be constantly just going and doing like this, and updating their Facebook page and doing all funny things, and they are not going to be having the time to chant Vishnu or Vishnu, Mahavishnu and this Vishnu and that, Vashatkara, all these names of Mahavishnu. They will not have the time nor the desire to chant. Everybody loves a shortcut. That's why we love Goddess Parvati so much, because she has done the world a favor through her studentship, through her discipleship. So she says, Kena Margena, how can look at the question. How can the human being get the same benefit in, in one word? So imagine 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu is equal to just one word. Give me one word. I don't want all this, because who will have the time to chant all this? Suggest one word. And then the answer is given, Sri Rama Rama Rameti. Sri Rama Rama Rameti, Rame Rame Manorame. Sahasranama Tattulyam, Rama Nama Varanane. Very beautiful, full of puns on Rama, Rama, everything. And so, the name of Lord Rama has that power. Really, it does. Ramante Yasmin Yoginaha, the name of Lord Rama means very powerful. This is not, Lord Rama has a name meaning. Vyutpatti Artha is that in which the yogis revel. This is what is the meaning of the of Lord Rama. And so this so if the yogis are reveling in it, it has to be Atma Rama, self, the nature of the self, of Brahman, of Ishvara as the self. And so, like this, Parvati features in a lot of things, and even in this Guru Gita. Guru Gita is again from another Purana where the Guru is lauded. This is also presented as a conversation from between Lord Shiva and Parvati. And the Guru Gita, if you don't know, is out of that itself our Guru Stotram is extracted. A portion of the Guru Gita is the Guru Stotram. That which goes Akhanda Mandalakaram, that one. Yeah, so that one is extracted from the Guru Gita. So that's why this, everybody knows that the Lord Shiva and Parvati enjoyed the best of and the most sacred of relationships, of that of a teacher, an exalted teacher matched by an exalted student. And they enjoyed many hours, Parvati learning and Lord Shiva teaching. And this is conversationally put in the Puranas, so that the lay people who are not able to study Upanishads, are not able to study Veda, etc., they can benefit from understanding that they need a teacher, understanding the teachings in a simple way, without needing to go to a Gurukulam, etc. Very simply put, but still has all the essence of Vedanta is there. If we don't get hung up on the story, the essence of the Vedanta Shastra will be very much there. So that is why he brings in this divine, this celestial couple. He brings this jodi, this couple, and then he says that, whatever I am going to tell you about Chidanandamayi Sthitihi. Chidanandamayi, female, goes with Sthiti, which is a feminine noun. Sthiti, abidance. Chidanandamayi. Chit, we know, is consciousness. Chit is consciousness. And what is this consciousness? Awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of everything. And then when there is nothing to be aware of, it is awareness of nothing in particular. But it is an awareness that does not disappear. I am aware of the presence of thoughts. I am also aware of the absence of thoughts. That I never goes away. The I is equal to awareness, which is called consciousness. And that awareness is all pervasive. And since it is all pervasive, it is free of limits. We saw this in yesterday. It is free of limits. And since it is free of limits, it is a source of ananda. Ananda means, joy without without a second, without an end. Endless joy. We are not familiar with that, generally speaking. One is only familiar with joy that ends as soon as the Nama Rupa, the name and form to which the joy is attached, comes to an end. So the Nama Rupa gone, the joy also appears to be gone. But then that is not the truth, that is not the case. First of all, the Nama Rupa does not really go anywhere. It just undergoes a transformation, which is not available to us. Like a person departing this world, the person is no longer available for transaction. But that person has not really died, not really gone away, as that person is continuing in a different form. That person is a conscious being continuing in a different form, perhaps in a different loka, enjoying a cup of chai with Lord Indra because of the punya that the person did in this life. or perhaps has been reincarnated somewhere, or perhaps is a jnani, and then there is no need to come back, but still the jnani continues also as Ishvara. So nothing gets destroyed. Consciousness does not get destroyed. Nama Rupa may get destroyed, but that which inheres the Nama Rupa, that which informs the Nama Rupa, that because of which the Nama Rupa is the Nama Rupa, does not get destroyed at all, cannot get destroyed. It continues. If you say flower is, rose is, and then rosebud is at first, blooming rose is, blossomed rose is, and then wilted rose is, withered rose is, composted rose is, compost is, another tree is, another rose bush is. So Nama Rupa keeps changing forms. And what doesn't change is. Even out of ignorance, if I were to say rose is not, I'm still constrained to use the word is. Is. The is that never turns into is not is Sat. The name for it is Sat. And the is that that is whose nature is all knowledge is Chit. No, up till now I understood you. Where did you bring this knowledge in? Knowledge means what? What is flower? What is rose other than knowledge? Rose is means rose knowledge is. What else is there? Because if I say, because really speaking, there is no rose. Think about this. You can think about this rose. Rose means every day. That when you look at the rose, there is really speaking no rose. Because if I point to the petal and say, is this a rose? You will say, no, 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 that's not rose. That's called petal. And then, okay, is this thing which I'm holding full of thorns, is that the rose? No, 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 that is stem. What's wrong with you? How can that be rose? Okay, what about this? This looks like a kind of like a shape, almond shape. No, no, that's leaf. That is not a rose. Leaf it alone. That cannot be the rose. It is a leaf. And then what? What is inside? No, 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 that's a stamen. That's not a rose. Then where is the rose? All this you put together. Okay, go to the art shop, buy a bunch of petals, put it together. Will it be like what Ishvara made? Never. You can buy some velvet or some crepe paper. You can buy some glue. You can buy some straws to make the stem. You can even squirt some rose fragrance on it. But it's just a poor imitation because you cannot breathe life into it. And that is what is Chit. That because the rose, there is no such thing called rose. It is Mithya. All that is there is Ishvara. And rose is nothing but rose knowledge. You ask a rose specialist, and the rose specialist will say the petals are like this because of this kind of a need and adaptation to survive, and the thorns are like this because for the requirement of self protection. Otherwise, it will be deer food. All the deer will come and eat it, and so the rose needs to survive. That's why it has thorns, and the fragrance comes from this. All this they will tell. So rose is nothing but rose knowledge is. Rose knowledge is. Sat, rose is Sat. Sat is, and then what is this Sat? Sat is nothing but Chit, and this Chit is awareness. Rose awareness is. I am aware of the rose. And rose itself is all knowledge, because that knowledge we don't even know. We know some things, but we are discovering Ishvara in the form of the rose endlessly. Why does this rose have this color and that rose have that color? Well, that's how colors work, because it means it throwing out that color. That's what it means. Why is it throwing out that color? Why is it projecting that color? I don't know. Every knowledge is up to the next question, which is inevitably answered in the phrase, I don't know. I don't know. That means what? It is all knowledge. And that which is the source of existence, because the nama rupa goes, and it is true with everything. I'm just giving the example of the rose, but with everything it is the same. The nama rupa goes, but that sat chit remains, and that Satchit is forever. Therefore, it is Ananda. It is limitless and whole. Therefore, it is the source of Ananda. And that Ananda is Swananda, one's own Ananda, not a contact high that is generated through some, through contacting some Namarupa. No, but I feel very happy whenever I see this person. Well, that's because you don't know them too well right now. We can say that. If you get to know them, you'll surely find some things to criticize, some things you will not like. So, so Nama Rupa here means, the Nama Rupa is Ishvarized. It is not, it is integrated into our understanding of Sat. Nama Rupa is Sat. Nama Rupa is Mithya. Mithya is nothing but Sat. Depends on Sat. It's a dependent reality. But Sat is not Mithya. Namarupa all gets included in Ishvara. Ishvara transcends all Namarupa. And so, therefore, this, when you say something makes me happy, that something which makes you happy is just bringing out that joyous you. That's all it is doing. Nothing is making you happy. Nothing has the power to make you happy. Otherwise, you would be constantly happy. Let's say you like ice cream, and then let's say a whole tub of your favorite flavor of ice cream was given to you, and then what happened? You loved it, day number one. Second, and you loved it so much you ate the entire tub of ice cream. Then the second day you were offered another big tub of that same ice cream. What will you say? Please, no, I have, even looking at it, I'm feeling sick. Why? Why is not, if the ice cream is the source of Ananda, why is it not giving you Ananda? Because my stomach is not okay. If I eat this, I'll have to spend a week in the bathroom. Therefore, I cannot eat this anymore. So that means what? There needs to be certain conducive situations for the object to give you happiness. Even that little, measly little happiness that the object gives, it doesn't give it all the time and unconditionally. There needs to be certain conducive conditions that come together. That's why the happiness derived from objects is oh so elusive, because for these ideal conditions to come together is not possible all the time. So, one condition is that the mode of enjoyment, whether it's the sense organs, eyes, ears, etc., should be functioning very well. Stomach here, and then so the digestive system, etc., should be functioning very well. Jatharagni should be strong, the stomach fire should be strong. Okay, then what happens? Okay, let's say one is hungry, and then one has had a terrible fight with the significant other, and then the tub of ice cream is offered along with a spoon. Please have this. No, the mood is not there. So, what is coming in the way of the enjoyment? Ishtavastu is there. Ishtavastu prapti. The gain of the Ishtavastu has already happened. Why are you not happy? No, the person says, I had a fight with my best friend, with my spouse, whatever it is. So my mood is off. So it's not necessary that only the subject and the object meet and then that evokes or gives birth to happiness. No. So the organs of the sense organs and the organs of action should be functioning properly. The mode of enjoyment should be alive, kicking, and in top form, and the mind should be in a calm and conducive place. Otherwise, you become the main impediment that stands in the way of your own enjoyment of a particular object. Very, very interesting. So this whole subject object unity, the what is that, the separate the removal of the distance between the subject and object does not and cannot always lead to joy. There is no such object called joy. There is no such place called happy place. Unless you if you say I'm going to my happy place, it means an entirely different thing in psychological parlance. It means that I'm getting disconnected. That's what it means. There is no such thing called happy place. Let's say you visited your grandmother's house as a child and it gave you some, you have some happy memories, but that's again a remembered projection. That's what it is. It's a projected remembrance. That's what it is. And so if you go there now, doesn't mean that you will have the same happiness. Of that recalled happiness will not be the same as if you go there now. And then there is no such time called happy time. And all these bars, which advertise happy hour, it's the most unhappy hour because all the unhappy people come there to gather. Misery loves company. It's happy only for the bartender who makes a lot of money at that time. That's all. So there is no happy hour, there is no happy destination, no happy place, no happy object. So if there is no time, no place, no object that is happy, where is the happiness centered? It has to be centered on me, on the very I that is being interrogated here. So all object happinesses that we experience in the world is a displaced joy, much like the example of the what is that example, the dog and the bone. A dog finds a dry piece of bone and starts to enjoy it under a tree. It is chewing the bone. It has not even a small little piece of meat on it, a perfectly dry bone, and the sharp edges of the bone are scraping the gums of the dog and causing it to bleed. The dog slurps up the juice and thinks, what a juicy bone the God has given me today. The juice is not coming from the dog. Sorry, not from the bone. The juice is coming from the dog. The dog is projecting similarly, and we are able to laugh at the dog and even enjoy its projection. But when we are confronted with a similar projection onto all the Nama Rupas, that this is the one that is giving me joy, this is the one that is giving me happiness, that is where the error lies. This is where the big error lies, because the Ananda is centered on the I. So then what happens when you encounter an object? The pleased self comes out to play. The pleased self is dynamic in these conditions. That's all it is. And it is so the Ananda is can only be centered on that which is limitless, and that which is limitless is only you, is only Chit, and the meaning of the word Chit is you, the meaning of the word Sat is you, the meaning of the word Ananda is you. So Chidananda Mayi Sthitihi means abidance in this knowledge of myself as Ananda. The suffix is there. There is a suffix Chidananda plus Maya, female, feminine, Mayi. So this suffix maya in Sanskrit has some very interesting meanings. The first meaning vikara. Vikararthe mayat pratyayah. Vikara means modification. So here obviously it's not a modification of Chit and Ananda. In fact, that modified Ananda we are encountering every day. And so Lord Shiva will not foolishly be teaching Goddess Parvati the modified form of Ananda. So Chidananda Mayi, that the first meaning Vikara is crossed out. Then the second meaning of the suffix mayat, whenever it is attached to the word, is called prachuryarthe. Prachurya means preponderance. Like Annamayam Yajnam. Oh, you were invited to a fire ritual? Oh, please, pray tell me how it was. Oh, there was so much food. There was such a lot of food. It was full of food. In fact, I don't remember the priests. I don't remember the fire ritual. I don't remember what offerings were put. I don't remember what people were wearing. Only the food stood out because there were so many dishes. This is called prachurya, preponderance. So Chidanandamayi Sthitihi cannot mean, this meaning also cannot apply. And you know why? Because Prachuryarthe, the meaning of preponderance, means that there is always something left over. Some lesha is there. How? Like if I say Annamayam Yajnam, the Yajna or the modern day yajna party, the party was full of all kinds of delectable dishes. Full of delectable dishes means other things were also there. People were there, and there were some other things were there. So it was not just the dishes. So this also doesn't apply, because in this Ananda then there is most. So here the second word of Mayi would be mostly Ananda. So Lord Shiva taught Parvati the Vidya, the knowledge of mostly Ananda. This also does not fit, because there is no mostly Ananda, there is only all Ananda. So therefore we have to go for the third meaning, Swarthe, meaning in its own right. This one fits like a glove. Chidanandamayim sthitim. This alone fits. That this is exactly the meaning here. That Swarthe means in its own way. Chidanandamayi means that which is nothing but Chit, nothing but Ananda. All Chit, all Ananda, and the abidance in that very Vidya, in that very knowledge, is what is being taught, what was taught by Lord Shiva to Goddess Parvati. गौरीं महेश्वरः प्राह चिदानंदमयीं स्थितिम. So all this that we have learned just now, Lord Shiva taught to Goddess Parvati. The essence of Vedanta, how to abide in this knowledge of oneself as Satchit Atma, Satchidatma, Satchidananda, how to abide. This is what the Lord, Lord taught. And why is he telling us this? He's telling us this for a very interesting purpose, because he wants to plug himself into the Guru Shishya Parampara. He doesn't want to have the ego. He doesn't have the ego of saying, I have just thought it will be a wonderful idea to present the life of the sages. He says, this is not my idea. Lord Shiva taught this knowledge to Goddess Parvati in extolling the Guru's life. This is exactly what he was doing. In the Guru Gita, this is what he was doing. In the Puranas, this is what Lord Shiva was doing. And then, and in that same vein, I will also offer my 2 cents, is the second line. Vadami, I will set forth, I will speak, I will talk, I will reveal in the same vein. Tanmatachayam, tanmatachayam vadami, tatmatah, tanmatah, tasya matah. So the words of Lord Shiva, the knowledge, mata here doesn't mean opinion, the knowledge of Lord Shiva, just a shadow of that knowledge, the shadow of that knowledge of Vedanta, I will present vadami dinacharya apadeshatah, through the guise which is wearing a cape of the daily routine of the sages. I will present but a shadow of Lord Shiva's Lord Shiva's teachings. You know, and here very beautifully put. First, the first thing that is very obvious is the humility. Here again, after having venerated the life of the sages and what that is bringing to this what how it is basically writing itself through the god given syllables, aksharas, which becomes for him a pre-ritual called the sanctification of the instruments, his own body mind sense complex, and through the recitation of the stories, the narration of the stories of the various saints and their daily routine, what is happening, then he that becomes for him the wearing of the sanctity ring called pavitra, the wearing of that ring, and then the enjoying of the stories is the conclusion of this whole ritual. And then that is basically from the instruments of his craft, the instruments came alive and they took over his craft and they became the agent of his poetry. The sages took over his craft and his poetry. Very beautiful. In the second verse he says, I am hiding behind Lord Shiva. I am just a mouthpiece, a mere mouthpiece of the Lord. I am just basically talking about whatever He talked about. I am not saying anything more or less. And then what is there here now? I am just but a shadow. Vadami tan mathachayam, because Lord Shiva is so exalted, any kind of mimicry I can do is but a shadow. This is the obvious meaning. Dinacharya apadeshatah. Apadeshatah means through an indication. Apadesha, through a sign, through an indication. So in the form of the indicatory routine of the sages, I am also attempting to give this knowledge. I am not interested in what the sage does every morning. I am mostly interested in giving this knowledge of of abidance in Chidanandamayi Sthitim, abidance in Chidananda Maya self, abidance in that limitless self alone. I would like to offer my 2 cents in the same vein that Lord Shiva taught Goddess Parvati. सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्. That which began with that tradition, the lineage that began with Lord Shiva, and then for which lineage Adi Shankara was a bright comet, in the middle, and then up to my own teacher, I revere the entire Guru lineage. So beautiful, absolutely wonderful. And so here, this is something which is, this is a very beautiful verse. So this is the basic meaning. But since he is a poet, there's a lot of word plays and there are double entendres. So he says, Vadami tanmatachayam, what he knew, what Lord Shiva was, what he knew. He says, I really cannot teach. I can just but indicate. Why? Because this understanding of Satchidananda is not really taught as much as it is caught. And what do you mean by that? Because it is not a thing, an object that is to be taught. Like any it cannot be taught, but it can be caught. Why? Because I can indicate that, making you as the subject matter, because you are the subject matter of this teaching, and since you are the subject matter, and this is, you are alone here, the subject of the teaching, which cannot be objectified, and so it is taught through lakshya, indirectly. Even the words Chidananda Mayi Sthitihi, Satchidananda, Brahman, Atma, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Samvit, Chitihi, all these words, the whole entire gamut of the words, a glossary of Vedanta Shastra, what are they? They are just words that indicate you who are already self established, who are already self luminous, self effulgent. This is what it is. And so therefore you cannot teach this knowledge. That's why apadeshatah, through an indicatory practice, see how knowledgeable he is. Gauri was taught by Lord Shiva, and in the same vein I am also teaching, but my teaching is just the shadow. So, if you look at the shadow, somebody's shadow, you don't even see the person. Let's say the child is hiding behind the doorway, but it has forgotten that it is casting a shadow. The body of the child is casting a shadow that you are able to look at. And seeing the shadow, you understand that the child is hiding behind the door. The shadow becomes the linga, the indication of the presence of the child. Similarly, words such as Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Satchid, Ananda, Chidananda, Mayi, Sthiti, or Sthita Prajna, all these things, all these words, which he has painstakingly plucked from the meadow of the alphabets and strung them together. And now his whole garland, which he offered in the first line as his own puja, he is dismantling and saying that these words cannot be taken literally. These words just indicate. They are but like a shadow that indicate the presence of the I, and that indicate. And what do these words do? They sweep away the ignorance, making way for the I to be experienced without the ragadveshas. Usually the experience of the I is inhibited by raga, dvesha, thoughts, fears, tears, projections. As I told you yesterday, moksha is nothing but the withdrawal of all subjective projections. And so then through Vedanta Shastra, through the help of words that we know these words. We know the word Sat, which means existence. We know the word Chit, which means awareness. We know the word Ananda. These are all regular words in the vocabulary. And so, using these words alone, the teacher removes ignorance, using them in an indicatory way, not in a regular way. In Sanskrit, in addition to active voice, kartari prayoga, and then in addition to passive voice, karmani prayoga, we also have an abstract usage, bhave prayoga. And here all these words are used in bhave prayoga, abstract nature, abstract voice. What does that mean? Like, for example, if you say sat, existence. Bhave prayoga means you put the suffix, the English suffix ness, existence ness, you know. So, like that, ness. So, existence that already has the sense of ness inbuilt into it. And so, what is this existence? The only existence we know is of everything that comes to an end. Here, the end is removed. Existence, the pure existence alone, from the standpoint of the the finite notions are removed. Then we take knowledge. Knowledge again, does it mean knower? Does it mean the object of knowledge, that which is known? Does it mean the means of knowledge, eyes, ears, etc., inference? None of the above, but again, all of the above. That which upholds the knower, gives a presence, lends its presence to the known, is not outside of the operation of the means of knowledge, yet is not, which upholds all three, is not any one of them. That is what is knowledge here. You see, this is bhave prayoga, the abstract sense. Same thing, ananta, the timelessness, the limitations of time are removed. The word ananda it takes away the limitations of the words sat and chit, and together they function to remove the ignorance through the use of indicatory words. And that is how I'm, but you, through the usage of a shadow, I'm going to deploy these words in the guise of the daily routine of the sages. More we shall see in the next class shortly. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्तिः 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 हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ. Thank you.